Chapter 9: Testing and Results. It's now been over a year since I first read the article about DNA testing. I never knew that it could take so long to get something done. Over this past year, I have written letters to everyone that I can think of. I wrote letters to every attorney that I could find information that had used DNA testing in a trial. I wrote to colleges. I wrote to labs that do the DNA testing. I wrote the State Appeals Board and the State Crime Lab. I even wrote the appeals judge that handled my case so many times, and I'm sure that he has a file cabinet set aside just for all my letters. This is all I have: time. When all you do is sit in a small cell, all you have is time to think, read, and go over your case every minute of every day. Over the past year, there was two things that kept running through my mind. First was the collection of evidence. The small town that I came from was what I called the world's asshole. The sheriff department was filled with nothing more than inept rednecks that didn't know the difference between a secured biological sample and the shit they dribbled on their shirt when they were eating their lunch. My future in life was depending on how they had collected the evidence at the scene and how they had secured it. Had they worn gloves and immediately bagged each item separately? Had they properly refrigerated each item? Just thinking about it all day drove me crazy. My second worry was time. Time was always against me. Time was passing me as I sat in my cell, and time was my enemy as it counted down till the moment the affidavit came down and my death date was set. It now had been over 13 years since that cold night and the day when all the evidence was collected. I thought about the degradation of those biological samples. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that those idiots hadn't properly collected the material and they hadn't properly stored it. Could after all this time the samples have survived and still be viable in the lab? They had blood, fingernail scrapings, and semen. Just waiting all this time in baggies were hidden answers to hard questions. Waiting there in all this goo and congealed mess was the key to my possible freedom. Was it still there? My letters to Rose were still happy and hopeful, but I had noticed that over the past year, her letters had become more infrequent. When she did write me, she seemed distant. When I asked her to come see me, she always said she had to work or that she couldn't take the time off right now. This really pissed me off. She was out in the world free, and I was left sitting in this damn cell. I know that this waiting game was also hard on her, but for me it was torture. At least she had a life out there with things that could take her mind off the waiting. All I had was time and waiting. From the time I woke up in the morning till the time I went to sleep at night, all I thought about was the day that I might get a call from James that said that I had been eliminated as contributing to the DNA material found on the scene, thus freeing me. I was terrified at the thought of all my worries. What scared me the most was the news that something had been wrong with the biological samples, but also that Rose couldn't wait any longer. As long as she was with me and by my side, I could face the world and all the bad things. It was me and her against the world. You need a partner in this great big place. I don't care how tough you are, we all need a partner. I had to shore her up, and she had to support me as well. I hadn't come this far to be turned away. I knew that I didn't kill Amy Pilford, and this was my only chance. There is this guy named Tony that works at my job. He's real nice, a good-looking guy. We talk often, and he asked me to dinner last Friday night. I sometimes catch myself staring at him as we sit in the office doing our work. He's recently divorced, and he's got a little boy that's 5. I sit here thinking that right there, just 10 feet away, is a man that likes you. He's recently divorced, He's a man that I can touch, that I can laugh with, that I can spend time with. I could love that man. Then I feel guilty and my mind drifts back to Thomas and him sitting all by himself in that little cell. I am all that he has, and if I turned my back on him, he would be all alone. Tony once said to me, "Hey, come on out with me. Take a night for yourself." "I can't," I said with a smile. "You know that I'm with Thomas." Tony smiled as he shook his head. "Thomas is a lucky man. I have never met a woman as dedicated to a man as you are. I don't think I've ever known a person as faithful as you." But am I faithful? In my mind's eyes, I have seen a secret escapade between myself and Tony. I have kissed his lips, and I have laid my head on his chest, and I have listened to his heartbeat. I have straddled his body and shuddered at the thought of him being inside me. I have moaned and collapsed down upon him as my breathing was fast in that one perfect moment of ecstasy. I have betrayed Thomas in my heart. They came and got me out of my cell around 2 in the afternoon and told me that I had a phone call from my attorney. This was the moment that I've been waiting for. My heart was pounding and I was beginning to sweat. The walk from my cell to the phone seemed 1,000 miles. I picked up the phone. "James, this is Thomas, man. Give me some good news." "Hey, Thomas. I'm sorry. I don't have any good news." My stomach dropped out and I felt my knees begin to shake. "What do you mean?" "I heard back from the DNA lab. The material was too degraded. They said it was possible that it wasn't stored properly. The test came back inconclusive." "All of it? Did they test everything?" "They tested all they had. There is nothing else left to test. All they had was bad. I'm sorry. There's nothing more that I can do." "Well, where does this leave me now? Where do we go from here?" "Nowhere. This is it. This is a dead end. I'm truly sorry." I hung up the phone without another word. This was the end, the death of hope. I was taken back to my cell, and the door was slammed closed. The sound of the door slamming through me reverberated into my very soul. The sound was perfect. It symbolized the final door closing on all my hope. What could I do now? I saw those pictures in court, all that blood, and it was all degraded. There was semen, blood. It was everywhere. This was it? They had really fixed this one up good. I know now that they were not smart enough to know that someday DNA testing would exist, but they had really fucked me. They wanted to bury me with Amy, because if someday I could get out, I would be a reminder of this horrible crime that had taken place in their little perfect town, and that the killer was still walking their streets somewhere, and it would make them afraid. But when they killed me, it was all wrapped up in a nice little package. They could then forget about it and move on with their little lives, ignorant to the fact that they killed an innocent man. I bet whoever really did this was laughing his ass off. He had pulled off the perfect crime, and they had pinned it to the local loser. He got to fuck, and I just got fucked. How was I going to tell Rose? This news was going to be devastating to her. In her recent letters, she had voiced a lot of fears about the waiting process. I really think that she was afraid that the DNA was going to prove that I was guilty. Now, when I told her that it couldn't get an accurate result, would that be the same thing as me telling her that I was guilty? I know I'm going to lose her. I just know it. I had to prepare myself for that eventuality. I couldn't blame her. She had wasted over a decade waiting on me. If you truly love somebody, then you have to let it go. I couldn't keep her locked up in here with me any longer. I debated for hours into the night and into the next day the best way to break the news to her. I thought about a letter, but that felt too impersonal to me. She had to hear my voice. She had to hear the pain in my voice so that she would understand that she was not the only one that was disappointed. She hadn't been swindled. I never lied to her. I called the guard down to my cell. "Hey, Danny, can I talk to you for a minute?" Danny was a young guard, only been on the job about 10 months. He was a nice kid with a new wife and a little baby girl. "Hey, what's up, Tom? Do you think I could use the phone in a little while?" "I'll see what I can do. Thanks, Dan." Danny turned but paused. He then looked back at me. "Everything okay?" My red eyes looked up at him from where I sat on my cot. "I got some bad news today." "Is it about your DNA?" "Yep. The samples were degraded, and they couldn't get an accurate test." "Man, that sucks." "Huh, I know," I said, looking at my feet. "I'm going to call Rose and tell her it's over." "What do you mean?" "Man, I got to let her go. She has stood by me all these years, but today there's no more hope. They have nothing left to test. It's all over. She has wasted all this time on me, and I need to let her go." "Is that really what you want?" I stood from my cot, and as I grabbed the bars, I stared into Danny's face. "It's killing me, man. She's the only thing that has made all these years bearable. She's my heart. You can't live without your heart." "There's always hope, man. You can't give up," Danny said. "Where is hope? There is nothing left to test." "That's it, man. I'm dead." "Are you an innocent man?" Danny asked me. I looked straight into his eyes as I stood there with my back straight, and I wiped the tears from my eyes. "Hell yes, I'm innocent. Then there is still hope. The God I believe in won't let an innocent man die. You'll see." With those final words, Danny turned and left to go see if I could use the phone. I sat back down as I thought about what he had just said. God will not let an innocent man die? Why would God give a shit now? What has he done for me since I've been in this freaking cell? He gave me Rose, and he gave me that article to instill hope, only to rip it out of my hands and say, "Sorry, buddy, there is no God. God is dead." The phone rang and rang as I stood there silently waiting for her to answer. I was shaken as I waited. "Hello?" "Hey, baby." "Hey, sweetheart. Is everything okay?" "I got a call from James." There was a long pause. "Well, what's up? Please don't joke around." "Inconclusive," I whispered. "It was too degraded. They said it was probably stored improperly." "No," Rose said almost silently. I listened as I heard her begin to cry. "I'm so sorry, baby," I said to her. "I am so sorry." "I can't do this anymore," she cried. "I know, I feel the same way. What now?" "Nothing, baby. That's it. It's over. This is the end." "The end?" she said as I could feel my heart breaking. "It is," I said as my voice cracked. "But I still love you." "I know, and I love you too, but you need to move on. I'm going to die in here, and you've already wasted enough time." "No, you don't mean that." "I don't. But I love you enough to set you free. Find someone else. Marry him on the beach like you planned and have babies. Please do that for me." "No, baby," she wept. "Please, if my life can have one thing good in it, if it can have any type of meaning, let it be this moment in me setting you free. I love you, but please live, and I will live on even after I'm dead, in this moment. The moment that I finally did the right thing. I love you, she cried. I love you too, I wept as I hung up the phone. I wiped my tears on my shirt sleeve as I turned and faced Danny. Let's go back to my cell. In all the stories that I love to read, the most, there was the moment in the tale that the main character had to make a sacrifice. In many stories, this was the sacrifice that would redeem the character and save his soul. This was my moment of sacrifice. I had always thought that my coming to prison had been that sacrificial moment, but I'd been wrong. That was nothing compared to this. This was the moment when I loved someone more than I loved myself. This was the beginning of the end. Every day that followed the day that I let Rose go, I was filled with regret. I wanted to rush down to the phone and call her back and scream that I was wrong and I didn't want this. I wanted to do this so much that it felt like I was withdrawing from her. She was my drug and I was dope sick. I was shaking and sick to my stomach, and there was this little voice constantly in my head talking to me, taunting me, saying, "Come on, call her back. Whoops, take back. Didn't mean that." No, it's not about my feelings, it's about her. I'm not going to bring her down into this pit with me. Fuck my dreams. I don't have any. And I'm not going to let her die with me. If I did call her, I would be a monster. I was the monster that lived back in the woods that stole children off the path that led to Grandma's house. I was the beast that inflicted the pain. I was no longer a man. I had lost all my humanity. That is why I lived off in the woods away from normal society, because I was a monster. I stole dreams and I hurt people because I was hurt. It wasn't fair. And to make it fair, I would inflict as much pain as I could on the world. I would steal the children and drink their innocence, and I would take pleasure in their cries and whimpers. I was not a man. I had become an animal. I smelled foul, and there was dirt under my long yellow nails. I breathed smoke like a dragon, and I stole all that was pure from this world. I mixed your blood with my sweat and lust and ground it into the earth. I fed my black forest on your blood and pain. Blood dripped from the tips of the branches and ran down the trunks of the trees. I grew stronger the more you cried. Whatever happened to Rose? Well, she cried all that night. She cried into the next day. But eventually the tears stopped. And for the first time in a long time, she noticed the flowers once again. One day she got up from her desk and she approached Tony. They spoke for a moment, and then they made plans to go out on a date. They dated for over a year, and they married in Mexico on the beach, just like she had always planned. She wore little blue flowers up in her hair. They were both barefoot in the sand. Tony's son was the ring bearer. 4 months after the wedding, Rose found out she was pregnant. She gave birth to a healthy baby girl on March 16th that was named Emily. Some years later, they went to the carnival and they rode the carousel, and her dreams came true. I am glad that she got all that she deserved. She was a wonderful woman, and I will always love her. Sometime God put people in your life at different times, and for reasons that sometimes we can't see at the moment. God put Rose into my life because He knew that I needed her to educate me. She educated me in so many ways. If it had not been for our meeting, I might have never learned to read. I might then have never read the article about DNA and started myself down this bittersweet path. I'd always wanted to pick up the phone and give her a call, but I never had. I don't want to interfere in her life. All I want to tell her now is thank you. Thank you for loving me when no one else did. When I was alone, you visited me And because of that one gesture, you saved my life. I often think about our purpose on this planet. Is it going to be some grand purpose where we save a busload of children? But what I really think it is that sometimes our purpose might be something that we don't even notice. I read this story about this guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. He wrote in his suicide note that he was going to walk to the bridge today. He said that if only one person smiled at him, that he wouldn't jump. When he got to the bridge, he jumped and died. That is the truth about finding your purpose in life. It's not this grand moment, but it might just be just a smile that can save a life. A kind word can change the day for someone. It doesn't take any money or great power. We all can do it. Smile at a stranger. Hold the door open for someone at the store. Visit a sick person in the hospital. Write a letter to a man on death row. When you're all alone in this scary world, it makes you feel good to know that anyone cares. We are all frightened, even the biggest, scariest looking dude. A smile can save a life. Can I tell you a secret? I did not kill Amy Pilford. Over the years, that night and the memory of it has come back to me more and more. It's true that I had tried to shoplift in the store. I was starving. After Sam kicked me out, I went out and I stood in the cold. And I wondered, where am I going to go from here? It was then that I heard the door open and I turned around to see Amy walking over to her car. "Miss," I said as I walked up behind her. She turned to face me. The snow was falling all around her. I remembered that she smiled at me. She had the most lovely smile. "Yes? Do you need something?" She looked just like an angel standing there in the snow. "Ma'am, I'm hungry. Do you have any money?" "Well, let me see," she said as she unzipped her purse and dug down inside. She pulled out a $10 bill and held it out to me. "Will this be okay?" "Yes," I said as I took the bill. "Thank you so much." "Oh, darn," she said. "I forgot Todd's beef jerky." I turned away and walked over to my car and got inside as she headed back into the store. I started my car and I drove away. That was the last time I ever saw Amy alive. I have always remembered her smile. She saved me that night. I didn't kill her. I'm not a monster.